with you along with my family. I wanted to bring you an update on the preacher that you support in Nigeria. But first of all, Africa Evangelism, it is my job to equip and empower native evangelists to do the work of ministry. It's not my job to do the job for them. It's not my job to, tell them how to do it or what to do. I see my job as a resource person, someone to come alongside good guys who are doing good work and help them expand what they're doing even further. And so that's how I see my work. My work is overseen by the 70 West Church of Christ in Hot Springs, Arkansas. And this church here supports a preacher in Nigeria through this ministry. And this guy here is the guy you support, Paul Chinwindu Onwukwe. There will be a pop quiz later for proper pronunciation, so don't worry. You'll get that later on. But Paul is a younger guy, younger than me, and he is very excited about the work and what he's doing. This is him and his wife. He, got married not long ago. This is him and his wife. And he lives in a place called Imo State, Nigeria. Imo State, Nigeria. I was in Imo State probably 4 years ago. I don't get around to all the places, but I was there about 4 years ago, visiting several projects over there. This is me and Paul. Matter of fact, last month when I was in Nigeria, Paul came to visit to encourage me again to come to Imo State and visit his area. Because it's always often difficult for me to get by there. So he wanted to come in person and just kind of encourage me to put that on my calendar. Paul preaches for the Uvuro Central Church of Christ in Imo State. This is him. He just had a baptism this last week. And so this is him doing this is him right there doing the baptisms in the official baptistry that they have there, as you can see. Now, as you can see, the official baptistry, they're renting a office spot. They're renting like a little shop where they meet at for the church. They have no permanent building where he's meeting at. And so he's often encouraging me to also to come by and visit the work and perhaps find a way that we can find a permanent meeting spot for the church. The church continues to grow, but they're having a lot of challenges. Now, I'll key you in on some of the challenges they have in Imo State, Nigeria. One of the challenges in Imo State is the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church is very strong, especially in Imo State, Nigeria. And oftentimes, I will tell you many stories of how when the Catholic Church hears that a deal is going to be going through for selling land to a church of some sort besides the Catholic Church, the Catholic Church will come in and bomb the deal and either buy the land before it gets sold or do something to the owner to make sure the land doesn't get sold to this other church. If a church of Christ, I've seen many examples of churches of Christ renting things in Imo State. And the Catholic Church will put pressure on the landlord to kick out the church. And so there's a lot of examples of persecution, especially from the Catholics in Imo State. And this is some of the things that Paul is trying to fight and work through there in his area. Now, a few years ago, Paul started what's called the Walter Howe Memorial Christian Academy there in Imo State. It's not exactly in the same area where the church is. It's at another village just down the road, but there is no school in that village. And so he decided to start a private school there in that village. There are 300 students, little primary school students in this school. There is, public education is available in most areas in Nigeria. But public education, they're not well funded. The teachers are not paid on time. They rarely have desks and chairs and forget about books. They're just going to take notes on notebooks, and the teacher's going to write on the chalkboard when the teacher's in the classroom. Oftentimes, teachers in public schools will be paid, not paid for over 6 months, and then they'll be paid a little bit here and there. And so it really is a big challenge in public education. So therefore, public schools in Nigeria are not in a good shape. If you are a parent in Nigeria and you want your child to have a good education, you send them to a private school. That's just the way it is. And Paul has started a private school because there really is no other options in that village. So he started that school, 300 students. They have 10 teachers. I believe they just baptized, he said, 3 of the teachers last month. And so it is a work of education and training for children. In Nigeria, they say, capture them young, so that way they can teach them the basics of Christianity and New Testament principles from very early age. But also it's an evangelistic outreach to the teachers and the parents and the families around. This is where he's at. He does have a classroom building, but this is the main classroom block that he is trying to do. There is just block walls at the building. This is another view of the same thing, where he is trying to build up the school and eventually get a roof on it. And then he's going to be able to start housing students in there. Right now, he's just the church is meeting in a rented spot, and the school is meeting in another rented spot. That's all that's been able to do right now. He really has big dreams to be able to do this for the school and for the church. That is Nigeria. Imo State, yes, it does. Imo State is right there, right about there. Not in Owerri, but just right around there. Okay, that's where he's at. There is Paul and his wife. Now, as Dale said, I have been working with Bear Valley Bible Institute. I've done a lot of different mission efforts and a lot of different things throughout my time. I've been working with Bear Valley since 2005. A long time now, that's 20 years now. I've been working with Bear Valley. So there's a lot of good things that Bear Valley is doing. Now, Bear Valley, the key verse for us is, and what you have heard from me in the presence of many witnesses, entrust to faithful men who will be able to teach others also. Now, for Bear Valley, I serve as the director for all the schools in Nigeria. In Nigeria, there are 2 full-time schools. There are 19 what we call extended model schools in Nigeria. I like to call them part-time schools, but Bear Valley likes to call them extended model schools. We have 6 extended model schools ready to come online within the next 3 months. I'm trying to finalize their proposals as we speak. Just this next week, trying to get that finished up, get that approved from Bear Valley. We can come on with those. Now, the 2 full-time schools, I'm going to back up a little bit. The 2 full-time schools, there's one here. Wrong button. There's one here in Ibadan called the Southwest School of Evangelism. It's in the West. And when that school started, there was only 5 churches of Christ in that area. Now there are over 50 within arm's reach of that school. That school has been around for, I guess, since about the same time I've been with Bear Valley, I guess. But they have really done a lot of good work in church planting and evangelism, World Bible School work in the western part of Nigeria. The other full-time school is in a place called Amichangwa. That's what they call it. I don't know why they call it that. That's not the name of the village, but everybody knows it's called Amichangwa. I don't know. But anyway, it's located right about there on the southeastern side of Nigeria. That school is called the Nigerian Institute of Arts and Theological Studies. Well, that's a mouthful, ain't it? So we just call it NIATS, all right? There's 2 full-time schools in Nigeria. Let's skip forward here. And then we have 19 extended model schools. Now, the extended model schools are the same Bear Valley curriculum as a full-time program. The only difference is they meet only on Saturdays. And so you come in at 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning, then you stay 8 hours every Saturday for 4 years. And so they do one class per month. And so if you are employed, if you have a job or a business or a family, you just can't up and move to a full-time preacher school. You can stay in your job and in your home, and then you can go and get Bible training on Saturdays. We also have a few locations where they meet on Saturdays and Mondays because there's opportunities there. But there are currently 19 of those schools scattered throughout Nigeria. And it is my goal to put at least one extended school in every state of Nigeria. And that will include, brethren, the predominantly Muslim north. There's a lot of churches of Christ up there, and they need help as well. And so they're already calling for us to come up there. We have 6 ready to come online within the next 3 months. We currently have a current student count in Nigeria of 432 Bear Valley students there in Nigeria. Now, Bear Valley International, of course, we have the school in Denver, but then we have the international program where there are 70 schools scattered throughout the world. In Africa, South America, Asia, Europe, the other places, 70 different extension schools throughout the world. But if you add up all of the students in all the Bear Valley schools, over 1/3 of all Bear Valley students are inside Nigeria. And so it is a phenomenal number that we have going on there in Nigeria. Now, let me throw some numbers at you real quickly. Nigeria is a country the size of 210-ish million people. By 2050, they think it may get up to 300 million. By the end of this century, they project it will overtake the population of the United States. It is already, as we speak right now, the 6th most populous country in the world, right? Now, you just think about that for just a minute. We're talking about China, India, United States. Nigeria is right below all those. And they are on a trek of population boom. They're just unbelievable. And so it's the 6th most populous country in the world. It is the most populous country in Africa, the largest economy in Africa. They call it the giant of Africa. The churches of Christ in Nigeria are thriving. In fact, the best estimates are there are over 1 million members of the churches of Christ in Nigeria. Matter of fact, there are more members of the church in Nigeria than there are in the United States. And so the work is going well and it's thriving. Good guys like Paul that this church supports are continuing to do great work. Now, we have a few issues along the way. Everybody does. But by and large, the churches of Christ in Nigeria are thriving. 1 million members of the church. But if you compare that, 220 million population there in Nigeria. That means that the churches of Christ, even though they're doing well in Nigeria, the churches of Christ in Nigeria account for 0.5% of the population. That's not 50, that's not 5, that's not 1%. That is 0.5% of the population of the country. And so while the churches of Christ in Nigeria are thriving, in large part due to guys like Paul, whom this church supports, thank you very much, there is still a very long way to go. I want to take just a few minutes and talk about the trip I just took to Nigeria. I left at the end of January from Memphis and spent over a month in Nigeria. I visited 9 states of Nigeria. And let me tell you what, brethren, it took me at least a week to get over that. But let's move on. I spoke at a lectureship at what's called the Southwest School of Evangelism. It is located in Ibadan on the western side. The guy who's in charge of that school is Makinde Olufemi. That school's been around for 20 some odd years and is doing a very good work in that area. I often joke that Makinde can get 11 pennies out of one dime. I'm telling you, I don't know how he does all that he does on the little that the money comes through me for him. And so I just applaud his efforts and I want to continue to partner with him in his good work. He has about 35 full-time preacher students there at the school. It is a full-time Bear Valley program. Or we also have a degree program there that meets twice a year at the campus here. And then also we are looking at doing some master's classes there at this school, the Southwest School of Evangelism. The lectureship we had there in February was on the topic of counseling in ministry. And so we looked at some different aspects of counseling. I spoke 3 times there at the church, there at the school, and the school continues to do well. And also, let me tell you what, real quickly, this school is likely the furthest away that you want to be. I'm telling you, it is down 30 minutes down one of the roughest roads in Nigeria. And trust me, I've been on some rough roads in Nigeria. It is down a rough road in Nigeria. Even Nigerians don't like going down that road, right? So that tells you something. Now, there's no electricity anywhere in the area where the school is located. And so it is generally when I go out there, I just live on generator power for a few hours a night. But I am thankful. I know he mentioned it, but I'm thankful I got out there and I was shocked that he had installed solar power. And I was just like, wow, fantastic. And so we had solar power from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. And it was just fantastic. I just enjoyed it. And so that's the school, Southwest School of Evangelism. I also preached in several churches while I was there. This is in a church in Abeokuta, Nigeria, where I had never been. I like to visit new churches. Sometimes I like to visit churches I've been at, but I also like to visit new churches. This is a new church I had never been to, and visited with some of these folks. This guy right here in the green shirt, he's one of my staff members there in Nigeria, so I was there with him. After Ibadan, I shifted over to a city called Port Harcourt, which is down on the Delta area of Nigeria. In fact, a lot of the oil, matter of fact, a lot of the oil that is shipped out of Nigeria is processed and everything comes through that Port Harcourt area. So there's a lot of oil related businesses in that city. This guy here sitting next to me is his name is don't hit that button. His name is Anthony Aluria. Anthony Aluria is a good guy. He's on his 3rd church plant there in Port Harcourt, which means he plants a church, he builds it up to where it's supporting itself and can pay a preacher. And so when he's finished with that, what does he do? He goes and plants another church. He gets a preacher lined up and then he plants another church. He's now on his 3rd church plant, and he seems to be doing very well. These are some of the teachers that are there in Port Harcourt and who are doing quite well. Now that is, I didn't even think about the picture. That is not alcohol, right? That is a malt drink, just so you know, right? Just looking at that picture. Anyway, that's Anthony Aluria, me and him. We had a graduation ceremony there in Port Harcourt, and there was quite full of different people. We graduated 35 on the first batch in Port Harcourt. This is an extended school. 35. This day, we graduated 17, and I believe 20 students what they call matriculated that day, which means they started the program. So we graduated 17, we brought in 20 on that day there in Port Harcourt. And then, whenever I'm in Port Harcourt, they always like to partner me with different folks. After Port Harcourt, we went up to Cross River State on our way to what's called the Great Workshop. And this is in a place called Ugep, Cross River State. Now, I have been through Ugep many times because I'm usually on my way somewhere else when I go through Ugep. But this time I stopped in there and met with a guy named Michael Bassi Ubi, who is right there in his Great Workshop shirt. This guy here, his name is Omeni Egu. This guy here, his name's Abam Okoye. Now, Abam and I have worked together since probably 2004. I've known Abam, this guy right here. Let's see who else. Trying to see who else is in there. Um, anyway, we stopped in Ugep. They have several churches of Christ there. It's a city of about 300,000 people, and there's several churches of Christ, but it's far away from any school of preaching. And so what they've been talking about is an extended model school. So I went for the site visit, and this is us visiting the church and some of the potential students for this new school at Ugep, Cross River State. Now this is, we went on to a place called Ogoja. Ogoja is close to the border of Cameroon. In fact, there are Cameroon refugee camps in the town. So we drove by those every day on the way out to the church building. But we were at a place called Ogoja, called the Upagata Church of Christ, where we had the Great Workshop. Now, the Great Workshop was started by a guy named Doug Wheeler, whom you may know that name because he was the missionary who dealt with Nigeria before he retired, and I kind of took up the mantle when he retired and continued the work. Doug started the Great Workshop every year because he really wanted to have good training for these evangelists in Nigeria, but also a time of fellowship. And also, Doug, we're talking about over 1 million members of the Churches of Christ in Nigeria. And Doug would travel all over southern and central Nigeria. I also traveled all over southern and central Nigeria. And so it is impossible, even though I was there almost 5 weeks, it is impossible to get around to see all these guys every year. It's just impossible. And so what Doug started was this workshop to bring all these guys together so that he can see them every year and talk to them and give them something or discuss matters with them, things like that. I have continued that tradition. Now, the Great Workshop moves locations every year. This year was in Ogoja, which is in the far eastern side of Nigeria. This next year is going to be in Benin City, which is more centrally located in the country. There I am speaking there. It's called the World Bible School Great Workshop, Doing the Job Well. Now, just to be clear, it's not a lectureship where we discuss topics of 1 John chapter 5. We don't do those. It's not a seminar in the sense that we're doing, different projects like that. We are doing evangelism training. We train them on how to use World Bible School. We train them on how to use World Bible School online. We train them how to do the new Ocean Bridge program. We give them tips and training on how to be a successful recruiter and follow-up worker with World Bible School. We do classes on that. We do classes on outreach through social media. How can you do videos to reach others with the gospel? I recently uninstalled Facebook on my phone because I was tired of doom scrolling, as they say. But oftentimes, videos will show up on my Facebook where youth groups in Nigeria are doing short videos to teach others about the gospel. Young people. And it's really a great thing that they're able to do those things. And so we're having classes on how to do those videos, how to do online follow-up, how to do church planning, all these different practical evangelism training methods that we do. You can see the building. There are 740 evangelists present at this workshop. And that is, brethren, that is by invitation only because, the funds only go so far. I'm sure if we just allowed anyone to come, there would be thousands of people there, but I just don't have the money to pay for a workshop that size. But this workshop is really, really a great event. This guy down here, his name's Uyai Joshua right there. Funny story. It's not funny, but it's funny now, right? But Uyai was in bed with his wife in the middle of the night, and his wife screamed, and she looked, and there was a poisonous bug on the wall, right? She's like, Uyai, go kill that bug. So he gets out of the bed to kill this bug, and Uyai is a guy who is like he's one of the guys that's on his phone all the time. He keeps his phone right beside his bed, okay, on the floor because they sleep on the floor. And when he got up, he put his foot on the phone and slipped and broke his ankle in multiple places. And he has been struggling with crutches and everything. He was down for about a year. He's been dealing with this for about a year now. But he's there at the workshop, and he's a really good guy doing a real good work in a place called Aquiabum State. He's one of my staff members as well. But there's a lot of these guys I can tell you stories about. This guy here, his name is Solomon Usum. Solomon did his master's degree at Freed Hardeman in Henderson. And then he went back to Nigeria to preach and do evangelism. He was preaching in a city called Warri, Nigeria. You'll see a picture of that in just a minute. But I recently tapped him to be the head of our second full-time school in Nigeria called, the Nigerian Institute of Arts and Theological Studies, NIATS. We call it NIATS. That director had to step down, and so we needed a capable guy. I've been working with Solomon for a few years. I know he's a valuable guy. I've been working for about 6 months to get this lined up, and so he has started this last month officially as the director at NIATS. That's Solomon Usum, a real good guy, top-notch guy. This guy here is named Joe Obina. He is the director of the Nigerian Christian Bible College. I've been working with that school as well for several years. He's doing a great work there in Nigeria. Now, the Great Workshop, as I said, we have 740 evangelists there assembled from all over Nigeria. We had some from Cameroon. We even had one from Sierra Leone that came over on his own dime to attend the workshop. Now, as I said, I travel throughout southern and central Nigeria, and we have organized what I call E-teams, WBS E-teams, evangelism teams, all throughout southern and central Nigeria. Some are more organized than others. All right, they're better at working than others. But I always take time at the workshop to meet with as many of the teams as I can. This is some of the teams there we have. They're at the Great Workshop. Here is another team. This guy here, his name is Innocent Nwigwe. This is his team there. Also, watch out for my wife there. I also met with ladies, who were doing the cooking and cleaning there at the workshop. This is some of the pictures there. They were just excited to take a picture of me. I don't know why. This is some of the cooks we had there at the Great Workshop. And they were just excited to go and meet that. And then, of course, if you ever come with me on a trip to Nigeria, of course, you're always welcome. You got to be careful because you got to be ready to take pictures. People want to take pictures with a white man, and that's okay. I take pictures all the time with different folks to show different people. After the workshop, I went on to Ebonyi State, a town called Afikpo, where we just started a extended model school there at Afikpo. A guy named Reuben Egwu is a dear friend of mine. I've known him for 20 some odd years. I've known him and his wife and kids. I know all of them. But we've been able to start a Bear Valley Extended School in his area. And what we're doing here is we actually had a graduation ceremony that day. Not a graduation. They call it a matriculation, where they start the students. And then after the program where we had this matriculation, we all had these shirts on, and then we bussed down to the main highway, and then we walked for 3 miles through the middle of town, handing out Bible tracts, all with our little matching shirts on, and just talking to different people, inviting them to the Church of Christ, inviting them to sign up for World Bible School studies, And so this is at the end of the 3-mile trek, down at the statue commemorating the village head there, and we all took a picture. This guy right here, this is Reuben Eglu here, good friend of mine. This guy here, his name is Timothy Iwe. Timothy is one of my right-hand guys in Nigeria. He lives in Lagos, and he's built the church up to do very well. He's got another preacher in there, and he's really doing a lot of evangelism, different efforts throughout Lagos, but also Nigeria. He's just a really good guy. This is in Afikpo. Then we moved on to a place called Enugu, where I have several projects I wanted to visit on there. This is at a new church plant at Amoli Town. Now, Amoli Town is not far from another Church of Christ called the Ihi Church of Christ, but there were 7 members that were going to the Ihi Church of Christ, and they live in Amoli Town, so they have to walk from Amoli Town, which is about a 10-minute drive, by car. But by walking, it's a further distance. And so they've been talking about a church plant over there. And so we were able to plant a church in Amoli Town, and this is us kind of seeing the building that I helped fund this building. And so I wanted to go and see how things were going at Amoli Town. I visited another guy in Enugu, a guy named Samuel Kalechi. He's one of my Bear Valley directors there in town. Very fruitful meeting on the work in Enugu. Enugu is a city of about 3 million people. A lot of coal has been mined in Enugu over the years, so there's a lot of industry and such. But there are churches of Christ there in Enugu, but many of them are what's called non-institutional. They're anti-cooperation. And so they don't believe in Bible schools. They don't believe in Bible classes. They don't believe in cooperating with others. And so there's a lot of churches in Enugu that are like that. And so me and Samuel are discussing ways to try to reach into those churches because those churches are currently dying on the vine. So we're trying to reach into them to see how we can best minister to them and bring them along, kind of reinvigorate those churches of Christ as well. I met with another guy named Jimmy John from a place called Ete. Ete is in the northern part of Enugu. It's from the Ete tribe of people. Now, Ete is right on the border of Enugu and Kogi State. Now, it's kind of like no man's land, because it's its own tribe of people up there at Ete. It's got its own area. And so Enugu doesn't want to fund projects up there, and Kogi State doesn't want to fund projects up there. So everything's dirt roads. There's literally no schools. There's no clinics. There's no shopping. It's just people living up there in Ete. We've started about 5 churches of Christ in that area, and they're struggling, because education levels are very poor. And so they're trying to figure out ways to be able to help that as well. So that's in Enugu, a place called Ete. After that, went down to Warri, Nigeria. This is down where Solomon Usam has been the preacher. And let me tell you, I was impressed with this church. I'd never been to Warri before, but I was impressed with the church. They have elders and deacons, and the church seems to be moving along pretty well. Now, they're not happy that their preacher that they like, right, is moving from Warri up to their school of preaching. So they're not happy about that, but they already have another preacher hired to be able to take his spot. And so things seem to be doing very well. We had a Bear Valley graduation in Warri. I can't remember the exact number. I think there's about 20-something graduated from that program. And it was a very, very good day. A lot of good things happened there. There I am at the lectureship and graduation. One of the things that I do is I raise money for motorcycles. This is a guy named Olozi Usoma who lives in Abia State, Nigeria. Olozi does a children's seminar every May, and I help fund that seminar. And they have about 500 kids that come together, and they get crayons and some supplies, school supplies, and some just different things like that. But they have singing and Bible teaching, and they teach them the truth there, and they hoping to do that every year. Every year that he does that, it continues to grow every year, and so that's a very good thing. I was able to help him get a motorcycle. It costs about $1,000 to get a motorcycle in Nigeria. 900 and something, but then you add in registration and other things. About $1,000 is fine. So I was able to get one for him. And then he brought it for me to see when I was actually at the Nigerian Institute of Arts and Theological Studies. That's NIATS, is where I'm at there. I preached in a church in Uyo. This is a 1,500 member church in Uyo, Nigeria. This is in Akwa Ibom State. Now, it's a funny story. They all speak English in Nigeria, right? English is the main language. Now, I don't know if you can understand me, but I have an Arkansas accent, right? And so, generally speaking, I don't have any issues. But as we got started that day, just 1,500 people, and I was preaching on Mark chapter 5, and I was talking about Jairus, the ruler of the synagogue, and he has a problem with a sick child. That's what I say, a sick child. I try to keep the words, even though they know English, I want to try to keep it, easy. Sick child. Well, that guy could not understand sick child. He didn't understand it. And so they were even in the audience talking to him, trying to explain to him. He couldn't understand it. I said it several times. Sick child, right? And so a good friend of mine named Emmanuel Silas, he's an accountant that I work with there in the country. I work with him on a regular basis. He comes up, he takes over the translation for me, and he's going along, and I say, sick child. He has the same problem. He can't understand sick child. And so now the whole audience is just kind of in a roar about this sick child and the translation problems. Anyway, 1,500 member church, and we can't get sick child over to that. This is some of the church that we have there. The entire bottom is full, and then they have an upstairs area that they have up there, just full of different folks. Of course, you can see some of the ladies. All the ladies in Nigeria wear head coverings. If you're going to go to church or do anything spiritual in nature, you always wear a head covering in Nigeria. So you can see they all have head coverings there. We had 2 baptisms there that day. And so we had several baptisms during that time. I don't have pictures of all of those. We had 3 baptisms at Afikpo when I was there. Three baptized. We had 2 baptized here. This is the preacher at the Church of Christ there in Enugu. I went to a graduation at the Nigerian Christian Bible College. I spent several days there at NCBC. We have several projects going on at NCBC. We're renovating a library, and we're kind of constructing new bathrooms for visitors, and there's a lot of things going on. So we spent several days there visiting the projects, visiting with the school, seeing how we can help there. Also visited the West Nigeria Christian College. There I am speaking in chapel. It is located just outside of Lagos. And it is about 100 and something students, both on campus and off campus students. So it's a very good school doing a lot of good work. There I am speaking in chapel at the West Nigeria Christian College. So that is my trip this last month. We finished that trip on Sunday. And let me tell you, I was tired. Okay. Now I've got 3 minutes, so I got more slides. So we're going to tell another story. So I had been there over a month, right? And I was tired. I mean, every day in Nigeria is full of travel, activity, speaking, meeting, visiting something. I mean, something's always going on these trips. And so I visited 9 states in Nigeria during those 4 or 5 weeks. So I was tired. So on Saturday night, I arrived back at NCBC where I was at there late, like 11 something at night. And so I was tired the next day. We got up the next morning early. We went an hour away to a church, and I spoke in Bible class, and then another guy gave the sermon. I was tired. I'm tired. And so I'm sitting there. It's hot. There's a fan occasionally on me, and I sit and I doze off. I'm just tired, dozing off. So after the church, we had a lunch. And then, no, we didn't have lunch. After the church, we had a wedding ceremony. Okay, the guy named Joe Obina, who's the head of the NCBC school, he's getting married. His first wife died 7 years ago, and so he's been me and him have been busy the last 7 8 years working on trying to do a lot of work at NCBC. So he's been too busy to get married. So now he's not as busy, and he's found a woman. So he got married. And so we're at the wedding ceremony. It's at the church where Joe preaches, and we're sitting there. It's hot. It's 100 and something degrees. And I'm dozing off occasionally because I'm tired. I'm wore out. And so I doze off and I wake back up, and we're waiting on the bride, and we're just kind of sitting there. And finally, I doze off, and something woke me up. And the guy sitting next to me is standing up. Everybody over here is standing up. I look at the audience, they're all standing up, and there's the bride halfway down the aisle coming in, for the wedding. And here I was sitting, sleeping up there at the front. I'm thankful that probably every eye was on the bride and not on me up there sleeping. Anyway, but we had a good day on that Sunday. That finished up my 4 or 5 week trip in Nigeria. I have a few more trips in Nigeria coming up. I want to tell you real quickly what I did in December. I was in Tanzania for a graduation ceremony in Dar es Salaam. I coordinate the Bear Valley School there in Dar es Salaam. There are one school with 2 locations, and the school is doing very well. We have also started organizing evangelism teams for the city. Dar es Salaam is a city of 7 million people. It's one of the fastest growing cities in the world, and I'm really trying to get a good presence there in the city. There are about 15 churches of Christ in the city. And there was one missionary there for 30 years. Okay. 30 years, did a great work, but he left in the early 2000s. Since then, the churches of Christ in the city have kind of plateaued out. In fact, the churches of Christ in East Africa are not booming like the church is in West Africa. It's just not. And so I'm really trying to step in to try to help encourage them to, kind of step up their evangelism efforts a little bit. And it's working. God is blessing our efforts there. We graduated several at the school in Dar es Salaam. Here I am meeting with the teachers for the Bear Valley program there in Dar es Salaam. It's become kind of a tradition that we go out to a fancy Chinese restaurant. And we have a nice meal, and we have takeaway plates. And so they eat a little bit and they put the rest in their takeaway plate and take home to their wives and kids, because they don't have food like that at home. But we also have meetings, discuss several matters that we're going to be able to do. We have 2 locations in Dar, and we just this month, March, opened up a new school location. We shifted it from a church building to this house. It's a rented house. Close to the church building, but this house is going to allow us to have the classes there uninterrupted, because we had problems with interruptions at the church building. It's going to allow us to stay there, have classes, Bear Valley classes, uninterrupted. But also, we want to make this a mission center where we have track printing, some housing and materials there, a lot of other plans we have for this house right in the center of Dar es Salaam. After that, I went down to Malawi. We have a full-time school in Malawi. We're going to graduate 3. I am teaching the book of Hebrews with these 3 students down in Malawi. The place is called Koronga, Malawi. Matter of fact, Dale flew into Lilongwe, where Dale Kashner is. And then I went on up to Koronga from there. But Koronga, man, it's like a 6-hour drive to Mzuzu, and it's like another 5-hour drive. It's like 10-hour drive north, from where Dale Kashner lives. So it's way up there by Lake Malawi, and it is hot as all get out. This is in Karonga, Malawi. This guy is named Lighten Mhango and Navy Theu. How I'm connected to these guys is they were former students of mine at Chimala when I lived in Tanzania. I taught at the preacher school there at Chimala. These are some of my former students. And so I try to keep up with my students who are doing good work, and these are some of those guys. Navy is doing a good work, and Lighten lives in the area, and he's just doing the best that he can. He got this school of preaching started, but funding is a problem, and I've been trying to help him a little bit, but it's just been a major issue. We graduated 3 on that day. This is some of the folks we had at the graduation ceremony. These are the graduates there at Karonga, Malawi, but I want you to notice this next slide. Funding has been canceled for that. We've got 25 students ready to start a full-time program there in Karonga, Malawi. I just don't have the money for it, and it's just dried up. So if anybody's got $3,000 in their pocket every month, hey, you just talk to me later on. I'd love to talk to you about that. Next month, I'll be back in Nigeria for a 1-week trip. In May, I'm looking at a trip to Ghana. And then in August, my wife and family, probably family, are going to go to Nigeria for a 2 or 3 week trip. And then November, I'll be back in Tanzania again. And so as you can see, things are moving with the mission effort in Africa. My trips are usually very busy to try to go and visit these things. I travel often to go and visit different projects. As they say, trust but verify. And so I go and I know these guys are doing good works, but I often go and talk to them in person, see what's actually going on, what are the challenges, what are the successes, take pictures, and I'll report back as best as I can. Very much like I'm doing this morning with the guy that this church supports, Paul Chinwendu Onwukwe. So I want to encourage this church to continue with Paul and maybe even do even more because he's doing a good work in that area where it's very much needed. And I also thank you for the time to be able to visit with you today. And I'll be glad to visit with you after class or after church if any questions you might have or anything you'd like to discuss. Thank you, and may God bless you all. Thank you.